My Nissan Xterra is back on the channel, and on today's vlog, I'm going to do a small upgrade. On this episode, I'll be primarily working on my Xterra, and before I get to that, I want to provide a small update for my 911. My 911 looks a little bit different. If you notice, the side diffusers I removed. I was actually going to realign it, but I want to see how it looked like without them on, because it's been about 3 years since I've had the side diffusers on. So I want to see how it looks like if I were to revert back to that old look. You notice the rear spats are also removed, and then also the front here. A few episodes ago, I was mentioning about how I want to work on the GT3 Cup front lip, and so if you notice over here, you can see that there's a little patching on that area. There's a small divot in that area, so I want to make sure that when I repaint this, it's smooth and the reflection is nice and clear. I also re-welded the front lip in the front here. You notice that before it was more like a V shape in the front because the arch wasn't that smooth, so I had to recut it and re-weld it, and so now it's ready to get prepped for sanding. And then on the next episode, I will be painting this and reinstalling it back to my 911. You can see in the back, I pulled out my Xterra so I could work on it. But before we get started, I'm gonna bring you over to my workbench and show you what I got for it. Here in my workbench are two boxes. I actually got this about maybe a month and a half ago. I just didn't get a chance to install it on my Xterra. So today we're gonna go ahead and open it up and talk more about it. So here I got, this is a pair of 1.5 inch spacers. So there's 2 in each box. So I have a total of 4. These are 1.5 inch thick. So it's gonna provide my Xterra with a much wider stance. And then here's where it's going to secure to the original lugs, and then the new lugs where the wheels are going to be bolted down. I have my impact wrench ready. I have an extender, and then the original bolts are actually 21 millimeter, and then the aftermarket ones that came with the spacers are 19, which is why I have the 2 different sockets here. Aside from this, I will need my hydraulic jack and as well as wheel chocks. So let's go ahead and get started. I was about to jack up my truck, but let's go ahead and do a before visual on how it looks like before the spacers, and then we'll do an after. So here's how it looks like before. You notice the wheels are a little bit tucked in. We're gonna bring that out about 1.5 inches. The good thing about this project is I don't need to get the truck up too high, just enough so that I can pull the wheels out. So it's probably only about 1/2 inch above ground right now. Now that I got my wheels out, I'm ready to put on the spacers. Before I put on the spacers, I do want to mention one thing, because it's very important before you order some spacers for your wheels, because you want to make sure it matches up correctly to save you some time and also ensure safety. The items you want to make sure when you're ordering is to measure the bore size here. That way the bore on the spacer will fit outside of the hub here, because if it doesn't fit, if it's smaller, it's not going to sit well. If you notice here, it kind of indents out. So you want to make sure that the bore size is the right size. So if I put this here, you'll see that it fits right inside that hub. And then of course you want to make sure that the bolt pattern is the exact same. And then another important thing you want to make sure is the bolts. This one is an M12 by 1.25, and I wanted to make sure that these hubs have the right bolts, because if I take out this one here, I want to make sure that it mates right into this one, because this is the studs on the original hub that I want to make sure that it's bolts on securely. That way you don't have to spend more time getting the right bolt or spend more money getting the right bolt. I get to get everything in one set. So that's something that's important that people overlook when they're shopping for hubs, shopping for spacers for their vehicle. Now that I got all the lug bolts torqued to spec, I'm going to go ahead and lower it down, and we'll see the difference between the rear and the front tires. Now that it's lowered, you can see how much of a big difference it is that the tires come out for about an inch and a half more compared to the front where it's tucked in a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and do the front now, and then we'll get a better view of how one side looks with the spacers on. I got one side down, the front I just completed. So let's go ahead and check it out and see if there's a big difference. Here's the new setup. You can see that 1.5 spacer really made a big difference. So now the front and the rear on the driver's side is done. I'm gonna go and do go to the other side and do the same process. Now that all 4 spacers are installed on my Xterra, I'm going to take it out for a drive just to test out to make sure that it's not wobbly or the alignment is off. So let's go hop in and take my truck out for a spin. Now that I got the spacers installed, it gives my truck a much wider track. So it's going to improve the stability, also the cornering. Although I don't plan on driving really aggressive with this truck, it will help when I take it on overland trips. One of the main things I wanted to accomplish with these spacers is the more aggressive look. Having it a little bit wider, because I already have the wider all-terrain tires. With the wheels poking out a little bit more, it gives it a much more stronger stance. As I'm driving, what I'm trying to observe is to make sure that it's not pulling to one side or a wobbly steering wheel. So far it checks out. I'm going to drive about another mile down the street, park my truck, and we'll talk about what's coming up next. I just got back from a test drive. If you notice, this area here is where almost a year ago I did the reveal for my Xterra. So I'm circling back to this area. Unfortunately, there's some noise. I'm right behind a grocery store and one of the loading trucks is here, so that's why you get all that background noise. So hopefully you guys can hear me. I moved a little bit away from noise so you can see a truck in the background and hopefully the sound's a little bit better. I'm gonna go ahead and flip around the camera and do a full 360 of my truck with the spacers on. Happy with the turnout. It was much easier to install than I expected. I've been pushing it back because I was kind of lazy trying to work on the Xterra. It's not as fun as working on a 911 or an M5, so I've been pushing this project back a little bit. The next thing I want to do with my truck is I want to probably powder coat the wheels, maybe make them like a bronze or a gold color, maybe even mimic the T37 bronze that is very popular in the JDM scene. When I take my truck out for overlanding, I normally cook in the back, but I think it'll be nice if I get an awning for the side and then maybe build a foldable kitchen. That way I could use more area around my truck when I'm cooking for my family. On the next episode, I plan on attending an event. I'm not too sure which car I'm going to bring. Right now, I'm kind of happy with my Xterra, so I might even bring that. It's a different group of friends that I normally hang out with. It's been a while since I've seen them, but they also have a big overland community, so I think it'll be fun to take the truck out. Other than that, I'm also going to be following up on my project for my 911, and I received a few things in the mail that I'll open and share on the next episode. So that's gonna do it for this episode. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you on the next one.